Merci Marjorie, bonjour, bonjour à tous. This year we'll do this speech in French. J'ai décidé de changer cette année de parler en français pour ouvrir cette session, pour vous dire que je suis très heureux d'ouvrir cette nouvelle édition des Dialogues de Lille. Ces rencontres sont un des points d'orgue du festival série Mania, à un moment de profonde transformation de l'industrie audiovisuelle européenne. Les Dialogues de Lille ont été pensés pour permettre aux décideurs du secteur, que vous verrez toute la journée sur cette scène, décideurs qu'ils soient politiques, qu'ils soient créateurs, producteurs, diffuseurs, qu'ils soient des différents pays de l'Union européenne ou américains, donc de permettre à ces décideurs de confronter et de nourrir leur vision du futur de notre industrie. Notre ambition ultime, avec ces dialogues, notre rêve un peu fou, c'est que ces rencontres contribuent à l'émergence des lignes de force et de partage qui structureront une industrie créative continentale vivace, vibrante, à l'ère de la globalisation digitale. Cette année, nos dialogues de Lille s'annoncent particulièrement riches et inspirants, avec un ensemble d'invités qui se succéderont, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, sur cette scène, très impressionnant et très varié. J'en cite quelques exemples pour vous mettre en appétit et pour vous réveiller de bon matin. Vous aurez sur cette scène aujourd'hui les dirigeants de l'audiovisuel français, avec pour commencer Nicolas de Taverneau, le président du groupe M6, Gilles Pélisson, le président du groupe TF1, et en fin d'après-midi, Delphine Ernotte, la présidente de France Télévisions. Les auteurs seront représentés notamment et sûrement magnifiquement par Pascal Rogard, le directeur général de la SACD, et Howard Rodman de la Writers Guild of America. Le monde de la production sera représenté par de grandes figures comme Yann Moito, le président de Beta, Caroline Benjo, qui est dans la salle à l'instant, de Haut et Court, et bien sûr Charles Rifkin, qui est désormais, comme chacun sait, le président de la MPA. Du côté des institutions, je tiens à souligner la présence de la Commission européenne, qui sera représentée par Karin Thornblom, et du German Film Board, et son président, Peter Dinges, et de son alter ego français, le CNC, avec Frédéric Bredin, qui nous rejoindra en tout début d'après-midi. Enfin, je voudrais attirer particulièrement votre attention sur deux moments forts et attendus de cette journée. L'intervention de clôture sera donnée par le ministre français de la Culture, M. Franck Riester, au moment où la France s'apprête à lancer les travaux de développement d'une nouvelle loi audiovisuelle particulièrement ambitieuse. Et en ouverture de ces dialogues, nous entendrons, avec, je crois, un immense intérêt, Ted Sarandos, le Chief Content Officer de Netflix, qui est en train de devenir, à différents égards, un acteur de premier plan de l'audiovisuel mondial et un acteur majeur de la diversité culturelle. Que dire en introduction de cette journée qui s'annonce donc si palpitante? Je voudrais faire émerger trois points particuliers en guise peut-être de programme. D'abord, l'Europe de la culture, si elle est encore balbutiante, connaît ses premiers succès et ils sont spectaculaires et très encourageants pour l'avenir. Et là, je pense bien sûr au succès magnifique d'hier à Strasbourg de la directive droit d'auteur. C'est indubitablement une victoire de l'Europe de la culture et ses premiers pas en tant qu'ensemble constitué. Deuxième élément, nous sommes à un moment où des forces centrifuges traversent le continent, à un moment où des forces nationalistes et de régression agitent ce même continent. Et aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, nous devons trouver un ciment à notre union. Et ce ciment, ce sont évidemment des valeurs communes, mais aussi, sans aucun doute, une culture populaire partagée, diffusée largement à travers le continent. Des acteurs comme Netflix, paradoxalement, il faut bien le dire, contribuent à cela. Nous avons besoin de plus. Nous devons probablement en faire une priorité. Troisième enjeu, le renouvellement et l'adaptation de notre écosystème européen qui doit se repenser pour embrasser les enjeux technologiques, commerciaux et culturels de l'audiovisuel de demain. Cela embrasse de nombreuses questions, les questions de la création, les questions de la circulation des œuvres, les questions de la régulation, des alliances et de la consolidation au niveau européen. Cela fait très probablement un beau et riche programme pour cette journée, que je m'empresse donc avec impatience et enthousiasme de déclarer ouverte. Bon dialogue de Lille à tous et à toutes.
Merci infiniment, cher président, donc en français. And now we're going to switch back to English for the upcoming segment, Europe and the US. We're going to have really interesting facts and figures on the analysis of the market, especially when it comes to shows and unscripted, and scripted though too. Avril Blondeau, she's the head of content insights for Eurodata Worldwide TV, is going to join us and deliver some news from the industry.
So, hello. My name is Avril Blondelot. I'm the head of content insight at Eurodata TV. Eurodata is part of Médiamétrie. Our job is to tell you who's watching what, when, and how. Our audience data is the currency. It comes directly from the television audience measurement agencies across countries. So in the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about what's been created in Europe and North America, what goes from one continent to another, but we'll be also talking about content and trends. What do these two continents have in common? What is different between them? This presentation comes from two of our services, the Scripted Series Report, which provides a comprehensive overview of the scripted genres, programming in prime time and across different slots, across a dozen of TV markets, and New on the Air, which stands for, which is NOTA, and it's a monitoring tool detecting and assessing any new series that is launched across 550 channels and in nearly 50 countries. So let's start this presentation in practical terms, a few facts and figures. This is what we cover in NOTA, and in the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about North America and Europe. What you're seeing here is a list of new original series which were launched in both of these continents. In the number of original series, meaning we exclude here adaptations, we exclude returning seasons, and we exclude also one-offs. It's only recurrent programs that has been produced and launched in each of these markets. In absolute numbers, the US dominates by far. I mean, it's more than 200 new series that has been produced and aired in the country. But it's approximately 2.5 times as much as the UK and 4 times as much as Germany. But overall, Europe is also 13 countries who produce more than 10 and put on air more than 10 local series per year. And if you put that in context, and in the context of all the new series that are original series that are detected by NOTA, it represents altogether 21% of new series are coming from Europe. And this is almost twice as much as the combined number of the USA and Canada. Between the two continents, there are also a number of co-productions, which remains quite low, but which is quite successful. What you're seeing now here is the two co-pros that were watched the most across both continents, in both continents. So on the left, on your left, it's in the US, and on the right, it's across countries in Europe. The figures here is coming from the scripted series. It's the total number of hours spent by these audiences watching this series in the respective continents. It's a huge number. It's a similar level, viewing level in both continents, and it's also similar kinds of projects. But behind this big financial co-pros, there are a lot more being done right now. You're seeing here a few examples, which are British-American co-pros, and of course, language helps, and of course, the partnerships that UK channels have with BBC America and Masterpiece helps as well. Killing Eve is perhaps one of the most successful recently. It was an audience success both for BBC America and BBC One, but also not just success across the many territories it aired in this year. But you've got also these period pieces. The Terrorist was made for AMC, but involving Scott Free Productions and a British cast. and an upcoming project, which is Gentleman Jack, and which is quite topical. We'll come back to that later. But outside of this very strong relationship between the UK and America, you've got also other countries coming up, and Das Boot was a great audience success internationally. It was, for instance, increasing the audience average of SBS in Australia. So it's not speaking only to local audiences, but it's also something that can travel the world. One of the most interesting dynamics right now, and it's been mentioned earlier partly, is the dynamics coming from the digital space as far as original content is concerned. What you're seeing here is the increase of the number of, or accumulated number of original series being broadcast by the top 3 American international platforms, top 3 in number of original series launched. And one of the interesting dynamics right now is to see this increase also and this new opportunities that it provides to the European production companies. Indeed, the number of original production made by these 3 platforms coming from Europe has increased 3 times since 2016. And here's what it looks like.
Fucker med dig, Martin. Ejer hun dig?
Der er ikke nogen, der ejer hende i den her verden. Det handler jo ikke bare om at overleve. Det handler om håb.
Du bist niemand. Kein Mensch wird dich vermissen, wenn du einen Fehler machst.
Es passieren unfassbare Dinge. Scheiße! Und die Musik spielt dazu.
Dann versuchen wir es mal mit Ehrlichkeit.
Quiero ser una novia muy mala.
Nunca vas a conseguir estar con ella, ¿me oyes? Cuando la pólvora se junta con el fuego.
Solo puede pasar una cosa. Explota.
Boom.
¿Quién fue?
No sé.
Esto no es un puto juego. ¿Tienes alguna pregunta más?
So back to figures now. So that's a number of original series split by continent. But if we look now at what travels, the share of the European and the North American series is increasing. Here are the figures. And the North American series represent more than a third of what's been aired in different countries in terms of foreign content. Of course, a large proportion of that is going to Europe. In 2018, it represented more than 430 scripted series coming from this continent. Overall, it was like 260 new titles, but because the European market is so fragmented, it represents a bigger number of launches. And you're seeing here the top titles, the titles that were launched the most across the European countries. And the figures that you're seeing here is the maximum booster effect that they had. So just to let you know that some of these were very good successes for the audiences, for the channels that aired them. For instance, Good Doctor increased the usual Vox channel average by more than 80% on the first months of its launch. But what's happening right now is that the number of American series going to Europe is decreasing. It has decreased by 34% since 2015. And one of the reasons for that is that it's no longer it's not necessarily always what the audience is looking for. I mean, the share of what the American series represented among the audience boosters, and we define as an audience boosters shows that at launch increase the channel average by at least 20%, though the share of the American series has decreased since 2015. Also, it's important to keep in mind that this flows is quite concentrated around a few channels in Europe. And of course, the other way around, we have European production going to the US, but to a lesser degree right now. Here you're seeing the list of the platforms it aired in 2018, and it doesn't include the international platforms, which we mentioned earlier, as it wasn't in the previous slides. Showtime is the first channel to air European production in prime time. It represented 50 hours, so to say 10% of the airtime dedicated to scripted series there. And that was mainly thanks to 3 series coming from a co-pro coming from Great Britain. And here you see, we are seeing with the upcoming projects coming for Showtime, the great diversity of what this channel can air. And it is to mention that a Spanish director is to collaborate on Penny Dreadful City of Angels. It's Paco Cabezas. So behind these finished tapes, you have much more coming up with European talent. The AMC Networks is also a great platform for non-British productions. Among the titles that have been launched in the past years, Gomorrah and Deutschland 83 were some of the biggest audience successes for Sundance TV. And the digital platforms, and that's something interesting right now, is opening up a lot of collaboration opportunities with European productions. You're seeing here many examples going to Sundance Net, Now, and Shudder, coming from France, Germany, and Scandinavia. But beyond the finished tapes, there is a lot more to do with the US. Of course, we know that North America is getting inspired of the successful stories coming from Europe. And you've got here 3 of the remakes that have been done and launched in 2018. You've got Splitting Up Together coming from Scandinavia, Falco from Germany, and Tell Me a Story from Spain that was adapted twice in the US. And Splitting Up Together was a great audience success on ABC in 2018. But beyond that, across the production pipeline, there are many more collaboration opportunities. And let's start with the beginning. We do have in Europe a strong literary heritage, and it is now recognized. It is recognized by the US, of course, and it is also something that is quite topical right now. What you're seeing here is projects that have just been launched or that are about to launch in the US, and they're all coming from European books. You've got 2 English authors here, 2 Italians, and 1 Swiss. To talk about La Vérité sur l'histoire de Harry Kéber. So it's a sweet story, and it's been a good success on TF1. It hasn't aired yet on Epix. And the same for In the Name of the Roses. It just started on Rai Uno 2 weeks ago. It was a great audience success there, and so we're waiting to see the results on Sundance TV. But inspiration goes both ways. You know probably about Alan Coben, and its first TV adaptation have been made in France. In 4 years ago, it did No Second Chance for TF1. It was a great audience success for TF1, but also across different channels. This series has also been picked by Netflix and aired a year after at the time. And between 2015 and 2018, Alan Coben work has been used in several productions between France and the US. up until he made the news last August with signing this deal with Netflix, this exclusive deal, and for the 5 years to come. And across the production process, so there are many opportunities I mentioned earlier, and one of them is a depiction of Europe. Europe is a great place for inspiration, and specifically for the Middle-aged stories. Some say that Game of Thrones was inspired by the War of Roses. And in fact, I've heard historians telling that this series is one of the most inspiring ways to depict what the feelings of the middle-aged were and what the biggest fears were at the time. And right now, we see, for instance, that the two of the best history audience successes are these period pieces covering the Middle Age, Nightfall and Vikings. What's interesting also, of course, is the talent. It's a key element of the production process, especially in the US. And we do have, and especially the cast is important, because it's a contact point with the audience. And we do have many, many actors that are known in the US. And just to mention two here, we've got Alexander Skarsgård and Babette Knudsen, who are known by AMC, AMC, HBO, and Amazon Prime Video audiences. And behind the camera, there are also a lot of talents going to the US. We mentioned La Vérité, the truth about the Harry Kéber affair, which was directed by Jean-Jacques Hano, a French director. Agnieszka Holland has directed and contributed to landmark series in the past years in the US. And we mentioned earlier Paco Cabezas, who's really working well in the fantasy and horror genres. So, because we have all these common points between Europe and North America, let's talk now about content and about trends, because there are common trends and there are some differences sometimes. The last macro figure I want to share with you, and that's not a big surprise, crime series do work in both countries, and it's also what's traveling well. It represents almost half of what the Europeans export to the US, and a third of what the Americans are selling to Europe. Therefore, our two first trends are from this crime space. The first one is about these new kinds of duos, which are working really well to tell a crime series. And it's not new. I mean, we have common trope. It's a common trope, and we have this very well famous cop or detective duos, which travels countries, genres, and genders very easily. And that's the latest European take on the Sherlock Watson duo. It's Sherlock that is set in, that is now living in Scandinavia, and has to cooperate with a female Watson coming from Finland. It's a Snapper Project production, and it's going to air on Viaplay. Another interesting dynamics is the one that combine the knowledge coming from the educational system and the COP. Project Blue Book is one of the very strong audience successes of history recently. And it's a brilliant professor college it's a true story, it's a brilliant professor college who collaborated with top secret investigation into UFO-related phenomena. Between the 50s and the 60s. Another different take on this collaboration is Maman à tort. Maman à tort, you have a school teacher, and that's a strong and relatable connection with a free-to-air primetime audience to convey an interesting thriller. And last but not least, you have these dynamics between duos coming from both sides of the law. That's a compelling way to tell stories. And it's been used recently in The Enemy Within, that has launched on NBC, where one of the most hated women in the USA is brought out of jail to try to stop one of the biggest acts of terrorism in in the US. And the other example is a Polish reboot. It's just started on TVN and did well there. The story is putting together a retired policer and a gangster. And the gangster is the one that the policeman has put in jail a few years ago, 12 years ago, when in the original series. And they have now to cooperate. The gangster is no longer a gangster, but they are both threatened by their past, their common past. And if they want to survive, they have to cooperate. And also, if they want to protect their family, they have to cooperate. And that leads us to one of the very interesting trends right now in Europe, is this strong family connection. You may have heard about Juda. It's coming from Holland. It was just launched on RTL4 and at the same time on Videoland. And nevertheless, it was a big audience success on linear TV. It's about a sister who betrayed her brother, who was one of the most dangerous criminals of all times in the Netherlands. Here's a clip.
Ben je klaar?
Ja, klaar. We gaan tegen Wim getuigen.
Dat pikt hij nooit.
Als wij niet stoppen, dan doet niemand het.
Ik doe heel veel voor jou. Maar ik doe niet alles voor jou. Want jij bent gewoon een ondankbaar kind.
Niemand kan je dwingen om de kant te kiezen van mensen die je familie wil vermoorden als niemand. Ik pak je.
Precies een vader, precies een vader.
En jij gaat gewoon doen wat ik zeg.
We komen nooit meer van hem af, As.
Je hebt ze allemaal vermoord. Allemaal.
So in Judah, family is the risk. In Trauma, it's a slightly different take. It's the loss of one family member that creates the risk. It's not a new project, but it's quite interesting in that perspective. It's about a father who lost his son and is so deeply touched by this that he starts threatening the man that he thinks is responsible, for his son's death. And the last example is coming from Spain. It was launched yesterday, the day before yesterday, and it was one of the biggest launches of. It was the biggest launches of La Uno since Estoy Vivo, which is currently in adaptation in the US. It's about two disappearing little girls, and it's involving their family, of course, and there is an investigation to understand what happened. It's set in the Pyrenees Mountains, and it's a beautiful setting. Just for that, it deserves having a look. If you compare that to what happens in the US, of course, we also have this family element in the US. Sharp Object is this very classic trope about a woman coming to a hometown to try to understand what happens in her past. I won't tell much about this project because you can screen it here at Mania. But what's interesting in the US right now is the number of these projects which show sadists or manipulators in the midst of romantic relationships. Dirty John typically sits in that category. It's about a charismatic businessman who transformed his romance into an abusive relationship involving the entire family. And You is about a bookstore manager who's obsessed by a writer he gets to know, and it's also starting to go in the wrong direction. One of the key differentiation points between the US and North America is that if we put these two examples in parallel, is that Europe tends to create a thriller and create fear thanks to real settings. The Pyrenees Mountains, a small village that everyone can relate to. While in the US, you have a long tradition of horror genre, and you've got Like Castle Rock is a typical example of that. It's a myth, it's a fictitious city that was created by Stephen King, and it gathers here all the world canons of Stephen King's in one place, including the Shawshank prison. And it's taking a different in distance to reality somehow. And if we go beyond, further in that direction, we have two examples, The Purge and Origin. One is what happens if murder is allowed 1 day per year, and the other is what happens if a spacecraft passengers are abandoned on a distant land. So this difference between paranormal and alternative reality from one hand and realism in the other is quite strong, I believe. Another interesting trend right now is this strong woman thing. That everyone knows about that. I think it's been mentioned in the past few years. Here are two latest examples. Bullet on one side, once again set in the contemporary world. It's about immigration, it's about terrorism. And the other one, once again, the American fantasy Land with Batwoman being the first lesbian in the DC Comics stories. But also the Me Too phenomenon has opened more room for women to express about how they live in society, what are the issues right now. Dietland is these stories about this society's obsession about weight and beauty, and it's told in a bold and funny way, which is quite interesting. And Ada is this story about 4 lawyers heading a law company and trying to fight to defend the causes of women and abused women. And it's not only women that are represented differently, and it's not only a gender flip. It's really new roles and that are given to everyone, and new stories. If you have been around for a few days, you may have watched The Virtues. And if you did so, you may have been, as I was, deeply touched by the story of this father who is on the verge of losing his son forever. We do now represent more men's emotion related to their families. That was part of trauma, and that's also part, if not the only perspective, but one of the perspectives given by the Father's Day. It's a Bulgarian series, it's been aired recently, and it had great audience success. Let's watch a clip.
Цял живот гониш нещата да са истински. Истинска тръпка, истински приятел, истинска любов.
Дадох му всичко. Само, че за един мъж всичко не е достатъчно. Колко съм тъпа, трябваше да се усетя по-рано.
Не пипай!
Нати сега семейна хармония, Калина. Той е виновен. Димо. Как можа да ми причини това, на мен и на детето?
Не знаеш за какво става дума, разбрали ли? Калина, не го...
И само се карат. Искам да се събудя, обаче няма как. Не мога да дишам. Уж щяха да ме водят в Дизниленд. Разбрах кой е лошия. Окей, не съм тъп.
And what's interesting right now is to see that this very topical trend with gender equality, the fight towards gender equality, is put back in period drama. You've got the American woman, who is about how it was to be a single mom in the 70s, another great time for gender equality. You also have Gentleman Jack, which I mentioned earlier, and it's about a woman in the beginning of 19th society. She's coming from high society, and she wanted to marry a woman. Let's go back to the 70s, and with this trust, 1968 is what it was. It was the Paris protest from the 1968 going to the small community, in a small community in Sweden. Here's what happened.
Gratulerar! Känns det inte fantastiskt?
Inte så värst. Tycker du att det känns fantastiskt?
Ja, det är alla som är samlade och att det inte regnar på midsommar är fantastiskt. Ska inte det här sitta på en söt liten flicka?
Inte på en ful gubbe menar du?
Jag är vackrast av dem alla.
Jag har ett viktigt meddelande till publiken idag. Fröken Ystad bör läggas ner. Hör ni det? Vi ska inte tävla i skönhet.
Är de politiskt?
Vi vill bli bedömda för annat än vårt yttre. Vi ser ett samhälle som går mot överkonsumtion, kapitalism och arbetskraftutsugning.
So now let's take the time to talk about Habits. It's a family period drama, a family drama, which is about a young girl going on a vessel and dressing up as a boy to try to find her missing father. It really worked well across different demo groups, and it's just showing the potential of this trend. It's not only a niche thing, it's really speaking to everyone, to all audiences. And another interesting element of this trend is that it's not only a gender representation, it's also this minority somehow have in the past created new cultural expressions. And we all have Mrs. Maisels in mind. It's one of the first stand-up comics in the 50s. And another example is Pose from FX, which you may have heard of. It's about the 80s and the emergence of the pre-Trump luxury era, the downtown social sphere, and the emergence of this ball culture, which within the queer community. There's a great attention to the costumes. It's very visual. I suggest we can have a short look.
It is time we remind the world who we are. Jackpot. Mother, what do we take? Everything.
The category is royalty.
What exactly is a ball?
Balls are a gathering of people who are not welcome to gather anywhere else.
Darling, the champagne is burnt. 12.
Baby, you are our secret weapon.
And that is how you do a ball.
So you see here, it's a small community, but it's such a compelling idea and a compelling story that it really speaks quite larger than just to a small niche of people. So the trends that we've highlighted here are not common to everyone in the world. It's really strongly linking the Europe and North America. There are much to do between Europe and North America, and that's probably why you're here in this charming city of Lille. Thanks very much for your attention, and see you around.